Guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Friday, August 15th, 2025, and today we're going to be talking about a brand new Republican poll from Harper Polling across the North Carolina statewide race. Harper Polling is a Republican polling firm birthed after the 2012 election, reestablished in 2025 with the former pollster for Trump's 2020 campaign and Vivek Ramaswamy's 2024 presidential campaign as well. Now doing polling in the state of North Carolina, likely for the RNC, for Michael Whatley, for whoever it might be, to sort of gauge where the voters are in North Carolina roughly a year and a quarter out from the next midterm election. Now, the new polling data that we're seeing in North Carolina has a lot of interesting information. Obviously, you can tell from the title of this video, and probably why you clicked on it in the first place, is that we are primarily talking about the Senate races. Regardless, though, what we are looking at are a lot of data points that can help explain such a massive lead for Democratic Governor Roy Cooper over RNC Chair Michael Whatley in this race. Despite it being a state that Donald Trump won in the last presidential election, North Carolina in 2026 looks like it might be voting blue for the first time in nearly 2 decades. Now, taking a look at the data points here that we can look at, generally speaking, not much actually is as predictive of what the margin might look like. For instance, data points that we initially gloss over are ones such as right direction versus wrong direction, where, generally speaking, we don't talk about that to the same degree that we talk about president approval rating, and that's arguably for good reason. These are the data points: Donald Trump approval, Josh Stein, Democratic governor, approval, general party sentiment. All of these different things are helpful calculus points, but I do think that the 2026 midterms, just as the 2018 midterms and 2022 midterms were referendums against incumbent presidents, 2026 will likely be the exact same. Now, in this line of questioning, they have done polling in November, March, and August, November of last year, March of this year, looking at the approval rating of Donald Trump. And now we are finding that in North Carolina, more voters disapprove of the job that Donald Trump is doing rather than approve, in contrast with the same data that was released in March that showed that more voters approved of the job that Donald Trump was doing. And it doesn't look like the numbers are moving in the right direction. Voters are strongly disapproving of Trump, and on the margins, you're winning over more of those somewhat disapproval voters moving against Trump. Why? Likely because of some of the actions that this administration has been taking. This stands in contrast with the Democratic governor, Josh Stein, who holds a 51% approval rating to a 30% disapproval rating, a net positive for the Dem Gov by about 20 points. Now, on the point of Roy Cooper, who served as governor of this state, 47% of voters say they have a favorable opinion of him. 15% of voters say that they have a favorable view of Michael Whatley. That's a big problem for Whatley. A lot of voters don't know who he is. And that's because Whatley had never been elected before. If you want to know the truth about this 2026 North Carolina guy in the state of North Carolina, that was redundant. The point is that you're going to be finding someone who had never run statewide before, had never held any elected position before in electoral politics, and had only served as North Carolina state party chair and national party chair for the Republican Party. Now looking at where we are, he's running for Senate, hoping to defeat a popular Democratic governor. And as you can tell, that favorability rating is pretty positive. In a 2026 hypothetical, the same voters here that disapprove of Trump by about 3 points vote for Roy Cooper by about 8 over Michael Whatley. A pretty massive advantage. In terms of definitely and probably, you find that the numbers for Roy Cooper are a lot better on the definitive edge. The probably edge is where you see he's winning a lot of those swing voters. But the good news for Cooper and for Whatley is that there's a lot of room for growth on both sides. About 10% of respondents have said that they're undecided, and 4% want somebody else. That's about 14% that's swayable in and out of different camps. But you'd much rather be Roy Cooper starting out with an 8-point advantage, because this, again, is a Republican firm. For most purposes, these are Republican internals, but it stands directly with what Emerson College is telling us about North Carolina. They nailed the 2022 cycle in North Carolina, and actually, to the benefit of Democrats, slightly overestimated the amount of support that Ted Budd would eventually get in the Senate race. But they're saying, and they said in the beginning of the month, that Roy Cooper was defeating Michael Whatley by about 6 points, and that is the numbers that we are seeing come out of this poll. Now, to give you my take on it, I have come to understand that a lot of these preliminary polls, when there's one candidate with very high name ID and another candidate where the majority of the state has not heard of them, is that often this race and these races do narrow. I don't believe that Roy Cooper will win this race by any more than 3 points by nature of how competitive North Carolina is. Even Donald Trump in the 2024 election, when he was outpacing a lot of his margins in 2016, only won North Carolina by 3 percentage points. When you think about the way that the margins have developed over time in this state, you actually haven't seen that many Republican blowouts. Looking at it on the presidential level, Democrats have found themselves in positions where they've been able to get close to victory. Not win, but close to victory, and with the right Democratic nominee, indeed win the race. Like in 2008, when they won North Carolina against John McCain. But getting back to the point here, 2008, last time Democrats won the state, but Republican victories since then haven't been all that impressive. In 2012, Romney won it by 2. In 2016, Trump won it by 4. In 2020, Trump won it by 1. And in 2024, Trump won it by 3. This state is extraordinarily competitive and has been for a very long time. But Democrats on the Senate math side have just simply gotten unlucky. The last time the Democrats had a North Carolina Senate race coincide with a Democratic wave year was in 2008, because then the next Senate race was up in 2010, 2014, 2016, 2020, 2022. All times where you're either running alongside a Republican candidate for president or an opposing midterm election with a Democratic incumbent, where the numbers don't look so good. Now, looking at where they are in 2026, North Carolina has a prime opportunity for the Democratic Party, and the data is very revealing. Cooper is in a strong position in this state and could very well win the Senate race. Not that it's a done deal or that Democrats should get overconfident, but the expectations here are quite strong, and the data only seems to continue to suggest that it is strong. For instance, on the congressional generic ballot, the same groups of voters that prefer Roy Cooper by about 7 points show that they prefer Democrats by 0.1% in the congressional elections. So these are voters that, without even being named a candidate, say, I will vote for the Republican, but when named Michael Whatley against Roy Cooper, leave the option open. Same thing on the state legislative areas where Republicans have a half-point advantage, yet are losing the Senate race, again amongst the same groups of voters, the same exact people, by 8 points. That is what matters, and that is what really shows that where we are for Roy Cooper in this state is really strong. Because if a Republican poll and a nonpartisan poll are saying the same exact thing, and that Trump is unpopular in North Carolina, but voters are roughly at even odds in terms of who they support for Congress in North Carolina, you're rerunning elections that we've seen in the past. Because that was the exact circumstances that led to North Carolina being so close in 2018, despite Republicans winning the overall vote share. The numbers about tied. Democrats didn't run a candidate in one of the districts, so had they run it in the contested districts here, Democrats had won the popular vote in North Carolina. But the point is that even then, they're only losing by about 2 points, a roughly tied electorate, that if this was 2018, no doubt in my mind that a candidate like Roy Cooper could have won the Senate election. No doubt in my mind that in an election like 2026, the candidate, Roy Cooper, will be very close to victory, if not the victor in this race. Because North Carolina has been very painstakingly tricky for the Democratic Party. No way around that. I mean, that is just the truest vision of it all. That North Carolina has been a state that Democrats have constantly gone to and said, we're going to win it, we're going to win it, we're going to win it, and then they lose it. But the circumstances of the year have never been to their benefit in the way they are now. And if Democrats do mess this up, it will not only mess up one Senate seat in North Carolina, but all of their hopes of winning back Senate control by the end of the decade. Because it won't happen. But not all, obviously, is going to be hinging on just North Carolina. There are other things at play and other things to talk about. But as of now, the numbers don't lie. Cooper, in a nonpartisan poll, in a Republican internal, in the betting markets, and in every metric, stands to be the favorite right now to win in North Carolina. And whether or not it holds through, and whether or not it becomes reality for this state is yet to be seen. But you'd much rather be Roy Cooper than Michael Whatley in the North Carolina Senate race for a variety of different reasons. And now the calling is coming from his own party, with the numbers that are coming from a Trump and Ramaswamy pollster saying that even in North Carolina, a state Trump won by 3 and by a point in 2020 and by 4 in 2016, the Democratic governor is up 8 points against the RNC chair in a nationalized Senate race amongst the same groups of voters that just barely prefer Democrats everywhere else. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, top left of the screen, rather, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join on the screen. There's a video for you to watch and then a playlist for my 2026 Senate elections. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.